Hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Muhammad Hosany and I'm excited to present to you my research from this year. My study title is Work-Study Balance and its Psychological Cost on Employment, Stress and Mood amongst University Students. Now, let's start with the simple but important question of what does a typical week look like for a university student and how does it really affect their well-being? Students today are trying to juggle studying, part time work, and taking care of themselves. And while it may seem manageable in theory, in practice it can create a lot of stress. My study looks closely at how students' weekly employment hours relate to academic stress and overall mood. Although I included academic and self care hours in the questionnaire, this presentation will focus specifically on employment hours because for me, that's what made the biggest impact during my university journey. Using an online survey, I collected quantitative data from over 100 students at Bangor University. Tools like the Academic Stress Inventory and the PANAS-SF allowed me to measure stress and mood accurately. Now, I won't reveal the results just yet, so please stay with me until the end to hear what we found and what it means for student well-being. So, why did I decide to explore this topic? Well, I speak from personal experience, and as a working student, I felt the strain of the cost of living crisis, having to pay for my tuition fees monthly, and living on minimal maintenance loan. I had to take on big responsibilities outside of my studies just to afford rent, food, and basic needs. That really shaped how I studied, how I coped, and ultimately inspired this research. We know student mental health has worsened in recent years. By raised concerns about anxiety and emotional distress amongst university students. And since the pandemic, the situation has only intensified. Financial and academic pressures are mounting. Neves and Hewitt highlight how increased tuition and living costs push more students into part time work, creating added stress. While working alongside study isn't new, it's now more problematic. Studies show how this combination can lead to emotional fatigue, academic stress, and mood disturbances, according to Ibrahim et al. University is supposed to be a time for growth, but for many, it's a time of pressure. Students are expected to manage studies, jobs, and their personal well being, often with limited support. Now, recent statistics show how serious this is. 1 in 4 UK students report having a mental health condition. 86% of US students feel overwhelmed, and over 50% report anxiety. 76% of UK students experienced mental health issues during their studies, and over half of them said that their mental health worsened during financial and academic pressures. It's also important to consider the developmental stage that students are in. Arnett described emerging adulthood ages from 18 to 24 as a period of identity building and transition. Students tend to move away from home, take on financial responsibility, form new relationships, all while trying to meet high academic expectations. This age group is also at higher risk for mental health issues, according to Kessler et al. And with pressures like social media comparison and future uncertainty, emotional dysregulation can become a real concern. Students experience role conflict, balancing academic deadlines, part time jobs, and social life, according to Souza et al. Especially post pandemic loneliness has only intensified that emotional burden. Now, universities are doing more to help with services like counselling and peer mentoring, but the research hasn't kept up. We still know too little about how work hours affect stress and emotional well-being. And that's the gap this study aims to explore. Although most research is, more in the early 2000s, there's not much contemporary research, especially post-COVID. Now, participants were recruited using opportunity sampling from Bangor University. A total of 126 students completed the survey through online distribution. After removing incomplete or invalid entries through data cleaning procedures, only 94 valid responses remained and were used for analysis. All participants were university students aged 18 or older, with no exclusion criteria related to sex, gender identity, ethnicity, or course of study. As part of the demographic data collection, participants provided their age, sex, gender, ethnicity, year of study, and mode of study, whether they were full-time or part-time. Now, this demographic information was collected in alignment with advanced HE guidelines to support inclusive and equitable research practices. Our research design was that the study adopted a quantitative correlational design using a cross-sectional online survey to investigate relationships between weekly working hours of employment and students' academic stress, positive mood, and negative mood. The study also examined group differences in these outcomes based on categorized working hours. So we had low hours being 1 to 10 hours, medium hours being 11 to 20, and high hours being over 20 hours. So we used a univariate between subjects and over. So this survey was also created on SciToolkit, ensuring accessibility and convenience for participants. Our measures are the academic stress inventory, which is a 34-item academic scale which assesses stress across 7 domains: teachers, exam results, test anxiety, group work, peer competition, time management, and self-expectation, by Lin and Chen in 2009. Now, each of these items were rated on a 5-point Likert scale, 1 being from completely disagree to 5 being completely agree. Now, the highest scores reflect greater levels of academic stress. As well as this, the ASI has demonstrated high internal consistency and construct validity in previous student samples, making this a good tool for research. Our second measure is the positive and negative effect scale, being PANAS. Mood was assessed using a 20-item scale developed by Watson et al. In 1988. The measure includes 2 subscales, being 10 items of positive mood such as enthusiastic and alert, and 10 negative mood items such as distressed or irritable. Participants responded using a 5-point Likert scale, from 1 being very slightly or not at all to 5 being extremely. So our procedure is that participants accessed the study either via the Sauna Research Participant System or through general online distribution. This could be through group chats or social media. And upon clicking the link, participants were presented with an information sheet. This outlines the purpose, duration, anonymity, and confidentiality of the study. Informed consent was required before proceeding. As well as this, participants were presented with some quantitative and qualitative questions about employment hours, study hours, and self-care hours, followed by the academic stress inventory and the PANAS questionnaire. However, as my research primarily focuses on employment hours, we will only focus on the data analysis within the 2 questionnaires. The online survey took approximately 30 minutes to complete. Participants completed the survey through Sauna. Participants completing the survey through Sauna were awarded 1 course credit, and this was in accordance with Bangor University's participant pool policies. The questionnaire was designed with a logical flow and clear formatting to minimize fatigue and ensure completeness of the data. When submitting, participants were redirected to a debriefing page, which provided more information about the study's aim, contact details for the researcher, and student support resources in case of emotional distress. Data was anonymized and securely stored to maintain participant confidentiality. Now, looking at some ethical considerations, this research received ethical approval from the Bangor University School of Human and Behavioral Science Research Ethics Committee. All data was conducted in accordance with the BPS Code of Human Research Ethics, as well as informed consent was obtained electronically before participation. Participants were also reminded of their right to withdraw at any point prior to submission, without penalty. All data were anonymized and securely stored in password-protected files in line with UK GDPR. Our data analysis was downloaded from SciToolkit, conducted by one of our researchers, and analysed using IBM SPSS statistics. I did 3 Spearman's row correlation tests were done for the first 3 hypotheses, being Hypothesis 1, there will be a positive correlation between hours of employment and academic stress. Hypothesis 2, there will be a positive correlation between hours of employment and positive mood. And Hypothesis 3 being there will be a negative correlation between hours of employment and negative mood. This is followed by univariate between subjects ANOVA, being our hypothesis is there will be a significant difference between grouped hours of employment and academic stress, and Hypothesis 5 being there will be a significant difference between grouped hours of employment and positive/negative mood. So moving on to our results, what did we actually find? So in short, there were no statistically significant correlations between employment hours and any of our outcome variables, being academic stress, positive mood, and negative mood. Although they were not although there was no correlation to how many hours a student worked and how much impacts academic stress or mood, we then did further research in our ANOVA when we grouped students into low, medium, and high working hours, but we still didn't find any significant differences, being because our p-values were greater than 0.05. So in all, these findings didn't support any of our hypotheses. Now, what does this mean? While it might sound disappointing not to find any significant results, it actually tells us something important. The effects of work during university are not one size fits all. It's more that some students may find part-time work giving them more of a structure. It could give them financial security as well as confidence. Others, however, might feel overwhelmed and burnt out, which may reflect what other researchers such as Creed et al. And Salomonsson et al. Have found too, as there's a lot of variability. There are a few reasons why we might not be able to see some clear patterns, one of which being our sample size being relatively small, which may limit the statistical power. Especially as a cross-sectional study, it doesn't really show any sort of causation. The measures didn't capture job type, work stress, or how students felt about their job. More the fact that timing may have affected results. Students may have felt less stressed if the survey didn't fall near exam period. As we collected data post-January exams, so just around the February mark, that could have also impacted the findings due to completion of exams and relief from students. Another key point is that students' lives are complex. The number of hours worked is only one part of the picture. Understanding their financial need, job satisfaction, mental health, and personal support systems can all influence how students cope. From a counselling perspective, we shouldn't assume employment is always harmful or helpful. We as counsellors should ask students not just if they're working, but how that work feels to them. Universities can help by offering more flexible, student-friendly job roles, providing time management workshops, and making sure wellbeing support is easy to access. So, what can we actually take from all of this? There's no really clear universal answer about whether work helps or harms students. It depends on the individual, their job, and their circumstances, as this changes over a course of 3 years or however many years a student actually goes to university for. This study adds to the growing body of work calling for more personalised support for students. Universities should continue to invest in student wellbeing services. For example, at Bangor University, trainee counsellors and student support are available to help those struggling with stress or balance. But do the students know that? Maybe, maybe not. We also need more research, especially using a larger, more diverse sample size, and potentially more qualitative methods that capture the full student's experience. Employment should be viewed not just as a risk factor, but as a potential source of structure and personal development, especially when well supported, flexible, and aligned with the student's goals. Students' emotional well-being is shaped by far more than just the number of hours they worked. Financial pressures, family responsibilities, coping styles, and job satisfaction all play a part. Counsellors and academic staff should be curious, not just asking whether a student works, but how it affects their time, energy, mood, and identity. Now, there's many ways universities could improve support. This could be by offering flexible and on-campus job opportunities, as there's not enough going around from personal experience. They could also promote access to student-led wellbeing initiatives. They could deliver time management and self-care workshops, as mentioned before, increasing support for international students with work restrictions. And this could also further be something to be looked at in international students and comparing whether international students have more academic stress and positive or negative mood in comparison to UK students who get things like maintenance loan from Student Finance England, Wales or Scotland. As well as this, universities could also encourage early engagement with counselling services. Again, as mentioned before, prior to coming to this university, studying elsewhere didn't really provide me much of a counselling opportunity for a student with a lot of academic pressure. Now, this research reminds us that students aren't just learners, they're workers, carers, friends, and individuals navigating complex demands, and our support needs to reflect that. Now, here is a list of all the references used throughout today's presentation. I'm happy to share this with anyone interested, so please do just let me know. And there are 2 slides of them. Now, I'd like to thank you for listening to my presentation on how student employment hours relate to academic stress and mood, and I'd love to hear your thoughts or answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. Goodbye.